Hello, False 9 Show listeners. Thank you for joining us today, breaking down U.S. men's national team versus Wales at the 2022 Qatar World Cup. The first game of the group stages for both teams was a really good game all around. Very entertaining, very exciting to watch. A tale of two halves and a lot to be gleaned from these performances of these players, of this group of players. Some disappointing things that we saw, some exciting things that we saw, and so there's a whole lot to break down and get into. Alright guys, so we see here the average positions of everyone on the pitch, and I think there's actually a lot to be taken from this metric. So this comes to us, of course, from whoscored.com, one of my favorite websites for using some more advanced statistics. I really like to use them for specifically this, player positions, the average position that players take up on the pitch. So there's a lot to be gleaned here, and one thing that I want to talk about right off the bat is how high our wide forwards were staying. And what Berhalter is trying to do here is a 4-3-3 of the Cruyffian system with slightly less rotation. I think it's less of the rotation and more of like Pep's Barcelona sort of thing, where we have a central nine. You can see here Sargent, number 24, was meant to be playing this role, this central nine, who drops a little bit deeper in order to link up play, while the wide forwards cut inside to be the goal scorers, to make runs in behind, to open up space on the wings for the fullbacks to overlap. And this is it's a common tactic for attacking sides, and it's a very good tactic when you know how to execute it properly. But there's a lot of problems that we saw in the way the USA are trying to apply this to their squad. Now, that being said, I think Pulisic and Tim Weah both had very good games. I think they're two of our better players on the pitch. In particular, I think Tim Weah was really excellent. His job was to stay high, was to stay as that last man, as that out ball, and he did a very good job of it, and that's how he got his goal. He made an excellent run, cutting through the back line, and Pulisic picked him out with a great pass in order to feed him in, and just a nice little outside of the boot finish puts it past Hennessy to make it 1-0 in the 30th minute. So it was really well done from these two. And Sargent, I don't think he was necessarily bad. We see him here, he's dropping a little bit deeper to play as like a false nine. But he didn't get the ball at all. He was honestly useless in this role. And I'm not saying that Josh Sargent is a useless player. I think he's a very good player, and he's been really solid this year for Norwich in the championship. But this role for him was not working. He wasn't getting on the ball at all. He wasn't able to distribute. He wasn't really bringing in. One of the things with a false nine is when that nine drops a little bit deeper, you bring the center back with you, or the defensive midfielder with you, further up the pitch to open up space in behind, and that just wasn't working. Wales were playing in a back three. They had, of course, Chris Mepham on the right, Joe Rodon in the middle, and then Ben Davies on the left. And the three of them communicated really well together and held their shape very strong, despite this attempt from the USA, and specifically Josh Sargent, to draw these players out of position and create space in behind. Josh Sargent was pretty useless in this false nine role, and I'm not sure that that's the way we should be playing him or that position, that man on the pitch, moving forward with this tournament. Another problem that I was noticing was the way that Yunus Musa and Jedi Robinson linked up. They were all over each other's feet. They stole space from each other. They weren't working well together. There didn't seem to be that much chemistry. I think they were really good in the first half. Particularly Jedi Robinson made some bombing runs down the left flank and held the width really well for the US, which is what he was asked to do. And that's what he's asked to do at club level. That's what he's always been asked to do in the men's team. And I think that's a really good role for him. And I think that's what we should be using out of him. But Yunus Musa is another player who likes to drift wide a little bit. He likes to play off of that touchline where he can beat players one-on-one on the outside to move the ball forward. He likes to progress the ball through his carrying, through his dribbling. And he wasn't able to do that as well. He wasn't able to link up with the other players. He wasn't able to get on the ball in dangerous areas. And he wasn't able to carry the ball forward into the final third at all. They were kind of on each other's feet, especially in possession. I thought Yunus Musa was another one who didn't really have that very good of a game. I think he got held up in a lot of ways, made some poor passes, made some really bad decisions. There were, I think, 3 passes in a row in the first half that he just gave the ball away in the center of the park for pretty much no reason. And I think a lot of that was because he was being asked to play in this weird role. I like him as an 8 that's a little bit further forward, kind of like the Kevin De Bruyne or Martin Odegaard role, where he is a shuttling 8. He's more of an attacking midfielder almost. I really like Yunus Musa in that role, whereas here he was asked to play more box to box, and I don't think it fits him well. I think he wasn't able to provide the progression that we know that he can provide while he was being asked to play so deep. I like him further forward, getting the ball with his back to goal, making a turn, beating a player, and feeding in Pulisic, Weah, Sargent, whoever it is. I think that's where Yunus Musa really thrives. But you can see here number 5 and number 6 on this positional match, on each other's toes the whole time. And I think if we're going to get something out of this tactic, out of this squad, we're going to need to spread those players out a little bit more, get Musa higher up the pitch a little bit more. So kind of to illustrate this point, I have here a pass map, a passing network map from Mark R Stats on Twitter, another really solid guy for statistical analysis. So this was from minutes 1 to 70, so this kind of was before the subs really started coming on and having an impact on the game. And we can see here that there is a clear issue between, on the left-hand side, between the way that Pulisic, Jedi, and Yunus Musa all link up with each other. They're all occupying more or less the same few yards of pitch space. And this is going to be a problem because we are going to need this left side, both flanks, where we focused a lot of our attacks was on the flanks. We're going to need both flanks to be a lot more creative and intelligent in the way that they use space. I don't like Yunus Musa staying so deep here. I think he needs to get a little bit further forward, and put a little bit more defensive responsibility on Tyler Adams. So I feel like there's an attempt here from Berhalter to create this intense attacking team, but he's scared to do so because maybe he feels like we're weak at the back or something. Despite the fact that I think Tim Ream had a good game, and I think Zimmerman, outside of the penalty giveaway, had a good game as well. So I'm more comfortable if Tyler Adams drops a little bit deeper, which allows Yunus Musa to drift inside. I want Musa to have free roam where he goes, and this entire, from the left half space over. I want him to have free roam of where he goes in the middle and final thirds. I think he's a very creative player, and if we really want to utilize him and get the best out of him, we're going to need to give him more attacking freedom, less limitations where he's filling in for Jedi, who bombs down forward and trying to get really, really close to Pulisic. I think Musa needs to link up with this striker. We don't really have any creative force in the center of the park. We were asking Tyler Adams to do all of that, or balls deep from Tim Ream or Zimmerman was being asked to do that. So I really am not a fan of where Musa was playing, and I have a feeling that this was much more tactical rather than Musa electing to pick up these positions. So I want to push him further forward and into more central areas, and give him the opportunity to drift out wide as well, to have a little bit of rotation. When Robinson overlaps, I think that Musa can kind of occupy this space, kind of where Pulisic is on this pass map, right outside the box in the left half space. I think that's a really good spot for him to then go and provide another out ball and get shots, get balls into the box from there. So I think that there's an issue here. There's a few issues that we've talked about. So Sargent being stranded and alone, this 9 position being stranded and alone. When Haji Wright came on, it was the exact same thing. He was also useless, and that's not an insult to Haji Wright. That's an insult to the tactical approach to this position here, and our attempts to create or to have important and creative, explosive players in the center of the park, which we're going to need if we want to get anything out of this tournament, if we want to give a good account of ourselves in this tournament. So I think this striker position, this striker area, is an issue. I think that this left-hand side is an issue in that these players are all standing on each other's feet, getting in each other's way, and not really bringing any dynamism to the game. There was very clear what we were going to do every time. Robinson was going to bomb deep along the left flank. Pulisic was going to try and dribble around inside for 3 players and then lose the ball. And Yunus Musa was going to sit deep to provide structure for this midfield. He was going to sit deep along with Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie as a 3-man midfield, which is a little bit weird of a decision because then it just kind of creates this 4 attacking players, which you don't really see in the sort of style that Berhalter wants to create. Normally, like, it's a Pep style tactic or a Cruyff style tactic, where you get 5 players each occupying 1/5 of the areas of the pitch. You divide the pitch into 5 different columns, and these 5 attacking forwards cover each area of the pitch, and they rotate interchangeably among that. But we were only doing that with 4. And that leads me into my next issue with Berhalter's decision. So we can move on to the next concept that I want to look at, which is where our attacks were coming from. And we kind of already touched on this previously, is our attacks were coming from the flanks, as we were pushing things down the left-hand side and the right-hand side, which left a lot of space in the middle, and we weren't really creating anything through the middle. So that's a problem. This Wales side is big. There's a lot of teams that are bigger than us at this tournament. So this idea of launching attacks down the wings and sending in crosses to 5'10" Pulisic, 5'10" Tim Weah, I don't know why we're doing this. We don't have a big man who's going to get on the end of crosses, especially against a 3 at the back Wales who have really big defenders. This is just a tactic that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I don't know why this was, especially in the second half, this is what we really went for. And that leads me to believe that this is the plan B. And I don't like that this is our plan B, is that when we can't do what we want to do, which is create space with this false 9 of Sargent for Pulisic and for Tim Weah to run inside like a V, to cut inside and head towards the goal from the wings. When we can't do that, I don't like that our second option is to try and just play crosses in from the flanks. I don't think that is going to work against a lot of teams in international football, where size and set pieces are a lot more important than in club football, where you have the time to drill rehearsed tactics. Right, so moving on. Next, I want to talk about this second half capitulation, which was kind of exemplifies why this was such a tale of 2 halves. So this is our XG timeline for the game, courtesy of The Athletic, with the United States represented in blue and Wales represented in red. So we can see the early moments of the game here, where we caught an early chance from Josh Sargent. This was a header that went wide. I forget exactly what this was. I think this was a shot from outside the box. And then this was the goal from Tim Weah, which put us right at around 0.68 expected goals, while we were really dominating Wales. They didn't have any chances up until really the end of the first half. They had their second chance, and it still wasn't even a goal, or a shot on target, I should say. Now, the second half, we went in for the break, and the second half starts, and there was a complete switch in terms of momentum. For the majority of the first half, the U.S. was incredibly dominant. We were passing the ball around with confidence from deep. We were breaking lines. We had players running in behind. We were really fantastic in a lot of ways, and we looked like a side that can compete, or at least give the big boys a run for the money, make the big boys be at their best in order to beat us. This second half, however, was incredibly disappointing for a number of reasons, and I don't think it's necessarily down to individual issues as much as it is collective, and part of it is that we're such a young squad. But that being said, when you concede penalties in the way that Zimmerman did, as an experienced player, he's expected to be one of the guys who is consistent and reliable, and that was just a really, really cheap pen to give away, and it brought Wales right back into it. A few moments before that, of course, we did have a big save from Matt Turner. Ben Davies got on the end of a corner and sent it. It was going in to the back of the net, and Turner just was able to palm it over. It was actually a really, really good reflexive reactionary save. And I think it's an example of Turner keeping his number one spot, showing why he deserves to be this number one. And then this penalty, it was clear that Turner got a hand on it. I'm hesitant to put too much blame on him. Yes, the keeper could have done better, but it was a penalty from Gareth Bale. There was a lot of power behind it. He's never expected to save that. So I think the fact that he guessed right, got a palm on it, is solid. Yes, you want him to be able to keep that out. It was probably one of the bigger goals of Gareth Bale's career, certainly the biggest goal of his Welsh career. And he's showing in his past two appearances with the LAFC and now Wales a knack for goals in big games, in big moments late in the game, which he's always shown for Real Madrid, but he's showing that he still has that. So that's important for Gareth Bale's career, and wish nothing but the best for him moving forward, hopefully in an LAFC shirt. That being said, this XG map here, or XG timeline, really shows how Wales just completely dominated this second half. And if XG is to be believed as an underlying metric, Wales should have won this game based off of just this second half alone. They were really, really, really good. Really good in the second half. It largely stems from Kiefer Moore, and Kiefer Moore is going to get my man of the match in total. I'm not going to talk too much about the Welsh players because we're a US fan channel here, of course. But Kiefer Moore was really good, and that was a good decision from Rob Page to bring him on, to bully this back line. It allowed them to go a lot more direct. They were struggling to break through this midfield three of Musa, McKennie, and Tyler Adams at the heart of it. They were struggling to pass through those lines, so they decided to go a little bit more direct, go over the top to Kiefer Moore, where he could then drop the ball down for players like Aaron Ramsey, like Harry Wilson, like Gareth Bale, to get on the end of those, and then try and create something. It was a quick way of moving from the middle third to the final third, or the defensive third to the final third, and that was what created their opportunities, and then eventually created the penalty, which Gareth Bale converted. I am very concerned over the fact that we just kind of fell apart, and we didn't really create anything here in the second half. At no point really in the second half was I expecting the US to get a goal. There were a few good balls, and I actually think Yedlin played really well as that inverted fullback, which is kind of surprising because you think of him as a wide, pacey player who's going to get crosses into the box, but I think he did well. Inverting as a fullback, stepping into the midfield, and launching these balls in. Two are much, much shorter players than the Welsh back line, so again, that's a tactical issue that I have there. And so I think this XG timeline just really represents how much more dominant the Welsh side was than the US, especially in this second half. Now, this XG, it doesn't include the almost own goal early in the game from a header. I believe it was Joe Rodon, headed it back, or almost got caught heading it back into his own net, but Hennessy was there to stop it. He got kind of lucky. It was one of those headers that just went right to the keeper. And so this XG does not include that, which that was a big moment. We almost went 1-0 up very early on from an own goal, but we were able to come again, continue to fire, continue to dominate in this first half, and get that goal. So moving on to the next area of the game that I want to talk about was the total touches from our players and both teams, actually. So we can see here, this is also from WhoScored.com, and it's a list of all the touches in the game. It's right here. So this is the total. So the US had 754 touches, while Wales had 590. Not surprising, we had a lot more of possession than they did, but that's how both teams want to play. The USA wants to control the ball, while Wales wants to sit deep, be solid defensively, and nick goals where they can, which is what they did. So I think there's some interesting things to note here that are very reflective of some of the things that we've already talked about. So number one, the leader in our touches, of course, was Walker Zimmerman with 98, almost at 100 touches. on the day, and I think he had a solid game, especially on the ball. I was pleasantly surprised with his passing ability, how comfortable he was on the ball. Tim Ream, Tyler Adams, Serginho Dest, and Anthony Robinson, of course, also had more than 80 touches. If you get more than 80 touches, you're probably very, very involved in a game. Very, very involved. And you can see here, so Pulisic also had 73. That's really solid from a forward player getting on the ball that much. The criticism I will level at Pulisic is he didn't do too much with the ball when he was on it. He gave it away quite a fair bit of times in kind of stupid areas or made some poor decisions. I think he needs to work on his release and his timing if he really wants to take that next step as a player. But we'll save that for player ratings to talk about Pulisic specifically. So we can see here Josh Sargent had 17 touches. Now, for someone who's playing as a false nine, this is absolutely awful. As a false nine, you're kind of dropping into the midfield to get on the ball, to open up space. And it showed that I think Sargent, I'm not going to say that he's not able to play this role that well. I don't think he's best suited for that role. I think he is much better as a poacher. But it goes to show just how useless, how little he was involved. So 17 touches. I mean, Aronson, as a sub, had more touches on the ball than Josh Sargent did. Kellen Acosta almost had more. Haji Wright had half the amount of touches, playing the exact same position for a significantly less amount of time. So I think that that's important to note there, is that Sargent and this 9 position, which is incredibly important in every single tactic, every single way that any team ever lines up, your central striker is incredibly important. The fact that he wasn't involved at all it is very worrisome, and we're going to need to change that if we want to get out of this group and if we want to potentially move past the round of 16. Something else to note is just how involved our fullbacks were. I think that's good. They're involved in the play. We want to push them a little bit higher up, in my personal opinion. I think Robinson did a good job of that, but Dest, I think, needs to get further forward so that his touches are more in the opposition half, where he's a bit more dangerous of a player. I do have concerns over how little Weston McKennie and Yunus Musa were on the ball. I want to see the more ball possession in the midfield and less moving it around the back. So in a lot of teams that try to play in this 4-3-3 attacking play style, you get what's called the donut of death, where if we bring up our pass maps, you can see it kind of creates this U shape here, where there's a big hole right in the most dangerous areas of the pitch. This area right here is where you want, if you're going to score and you're going to play as an attacking team, you want to have the ball moved around this area of the opposition's half quite a bit. And we weren't able to do that really whatsoever. I think we did well. Like the goal, for example, that we scored came from that area. Pulisic cuts inside, receives the ball here, and then lays it on for Tim Weah, who was making a diagonal run through the back line, and he just plays it in, and Weah was able to bury it in the corner. That's what you want, is you want to get the ball in these dangerous areas. When you look at where goals come from, in terms of the sport as a whole, not necessarily just as the USA or as the World Cup or even international football, as the sport as a whole, goals come from these dangerous central areas. And the more time that you can get the ball into these areas, the more likely you are to score. It's simple maths. We were not able to do that, and that's something that's going to need to change for the future of this men's squad. We're going to need to change that to improve in that regard. I think Sargent could be a player who is involved in that area and does good work there. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's a personnel issue, and more so a tactics and the instructions that you're giving to these players and asking them to do sort of issue. So something else that we can take a look at real quick is where our shots were coming from. So this is a shot map. Wales, of course, in blue, and the US, of course, in orange here. So these are shots that the US, on the right-hand side of the screen, these are shots that the US was taking, while on the left-hand side of the screen, these are shots that the Welsh were taking. And one thing that you'll notice here is that the Welsh had 4 shots in very dangerous areas. If you're taking a shot from the pen or in that sort of area right here, that's a good area to be shooting from. That is a high quality chance. It's a lot more likely to go in than say these long shots here, or shots like sometimes like this shot from the edge of the box from the side. The angle is a lot smaller. You have a lot less chance of converting this unless you're a phenomenal striker. Like this is something that Heung-min Son does a lot. Mo Salah does a lot. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang back in his prime would do this a lot. Convert from like this sort of area where these tight angles. None of these players are really that good to be taking shots from right there. So you can see Wales did a really good job of creating big chances in the center of the pitch. Now, a lot of these were headers, and that's okay. When you're that much taller and bigger than the opposition, that's really good for you. That, and you can see here, if we go over and take a look at the US's shot map, we don't really have any of those chances from right in front of the goal. So this shot, of course, here, right next to the penalty spot, was Tim Weah's goal. So that goes to show that when you're getting it in these important areas, in these dangerous areas like here, you're just a lot more likely to convert. Now, we did have these 2 shots from inside the box. One of them, of course, was a Josh Sargent header that went wide, and I think it was actually an Aronson header that hit the back of his head and went wide. I believe it was off of a corner. And that's this represented by this circle right here. So while these chances are inside the 6-yard box, they're not directly in front of goal. And when you have a straight line between you and the goal, when you're directly in front of it and you have the whole goal to aim at, you're just a lot more likely to convert these wide. And I'm not saying that these aren't good chances. These are decent chances. But you want to be... So, moving on to the fun part of player ratings, of course. So this is the player ratings from Who Scored. I'm going to select mine a little bit differently than what they said, because I disagree in some areas. So I'll start at the back with Matt Turner. Turner, I'm going to give him a 6.5. I thought he made a really good save from that Ben Davies header. Probably should have done better on the Gareth Bale penalty. Aside from that, he had a solid game. He was fine in possession and had a few good stops and one really good stop. So, fine game, 6.5 from Turner. Acceptable. I think he's probably the best keeper that we have. And at this moment in time, he's not really in any danger of losing his starting position, in my opinion. Moving into left back, Anthony Robinson. I'm also going to give him a 6.5. I thought he was really good in the first half, especially kind of quiet in the second half. He didn't really do too much getting forward. No, I'm not sure whether that was down to him or the team as a whole being asked to play more quietly, or just the youth in our squad showing. I'm not really sure, but he was a lot quieter in the second half, like everyone else in the side was. But nothing really to complain about too much. Probably could have been a little bit better defensively in terms of clearing the ball out of our box and marking his man a little bit better, making some better interceptions and whatnot. But a solid game nonetheless. Tim Ream, I'm going to give him a 7. I thought he didn't really put a foot wrong in the entire first half at all. He was incredible. He was playing really strong passes, breaking the lines, getting the ball quickly to our forwards, just bypassing the midfield, as well as being very solid and calm defensively. He played exactly what we need him to play, which was the experienced leader center half at the back, being very dependable and reliable. And I think that he was even like that in the second half. I don't think his second half fell off quite as hard as the rest of the team's second half did. So I think Ream, for me, gets a 7, and he looks up for it. There's a few players who really look up for it to make a go of this World Cup. Ream, Pulisic, of course, are big names there, but Ream looks up for it. Moving on to Zimmerman, people are going to be really hard on him for the penalty giveaway. I'm going to give him a 6. I'm not going to knock him too hard for that. Obviously should have done better. He was coming in. Bale had his back to goal, and Zimmerman just tried to go through him. It's a pen every single time. So I've seen a few people online and whatnot saying that oh, it's not a pen, ref is poor, and ref was really poor all day. He got the penalty decision right. It was a pen every single time. That's a penalty. That one is on Zimmerman, but aside from that, he did have a decent game. I think he got bullied quite a bit by Kiefer Moore when Kiefer Moore came on. But he was still he wasn't as bad as I think a lot of people are going to make him out to be. Serginho Dest, I'm going to give a 6 as well. Didn't really do anything of note. I think the yellow that he was given really on was soft, and we're going to talk about the ref in just a second. But aside from that, Dest didn't really do anything of note. He spent a lot of time in that inverted fullback area, in that inverted fullback position, which is not well suited to his capabilities. I think he likes to dribble a lot, likes to beat his man one-on-one in the wide spaces and get crosses in from wide, and he wasn't able to do that as he was playing this inverted fullback, which adds defensive stability, but I think when you've got Weston McKennie there, you can push Dest a little further forward and drop McKennie a little bit deeper, kind of switch what they were asked to do when in possession in the final third and middle third. Moving into the midfield, Yunus Musa gets a 6 for me. Didn't really do anything impressive in my personal opinion. Gave the ball away a few times when he shouldn't have. Wasn't really poor per se, but just didn't really do anything impressive whatsoever. And it's kind of disappointing because there's a lot of excitement surrounding this kid. He's the youngest player we have in our starting lineup, one of the youngest players at the tournament. There's a very exciting talent, and we know that there's a player in there. This was certainly not his best showcase, and hopefully moving forward he can be a little bit better. Tyler Adams gets man of the match for me. I know people will say Tim Weah or Christian Pulisic deserves it. Tyler Adams was the heartbeat at the midfield, wearing the captain's band. He was really, really good in pretty much every regard. He was a defensive beast, especially in the first half. He was clearing up every opportunity that happened. He was really solid. So Tyler Adams gets a 7 for me, man of the match, in terms of the U.S. at least. Really, really good performance from him. And we're going to need more performances from him like that if we're going to get out of these group stages. Weston McKennie, I'm going to give him a 6 as well. Again, I just didn't think he did anything too particularly impressive. Didn't really do anything too poor either. His yellow was deserved and was kind of a stupid foul from him coming in from behind on the sideline. Ball was going out of play, and he just comes in from behind on Nico Williams. So I think that yellow there is a bit of a stupid decision, but it didn't end up costing us. It is a bit of a danger because when you get 2 yellow cards in this tournament, that's when you're then suspended for a game and have to sit it out. So that is something to watch out for. Already being on a yellow card is dangerous, but he gets a 6 for me. Pulisic, I'm giving him a 7. Yeah, he had an up and down performance. A lot of the second half he spent on the floor, which if he's injured, that's dangerous. And I think we need to consider taking him off in situations like that. We do have players who can do what he can do in the likes of Giovanni Reina, in the likes of Brendan Aronson. So I'm hesitant to play with Pulisic's health like that. And he made a few weird decision make. He has some weird decision making issues in the release and timing of his balls. Needs to improve. He's got good delivery. He's got good technique, and he's hard to dispossess. Got a good final ball on him, but it's his timing and his decision making, his release that really bothers me sometimes. I mean, he'll have an opportunity to feed someone into a more dangerous area or to keep possession, and he elects instead to try and dribble through 3 players, and then we give it away, and it's the end of the attack. And from someone who's supposed to be our best player, that can't keep happening. That needs to improve. If we want to do something in this tournament, we need Pulisic to go from a 7 to an 8 or a 9 in these sorts of matches. I mean, this is Wales. We should be beating these guys. Into Josh Sargent, yeah, he gets a 5 for me. Just he didn't get on the ball whatsoever. He was a complete non-factor, a complete non-factor. So he gets a 5 from me. Tim Weah, I'm very comfortable giving him a 7. Took his goal really well, was dangerous, made some dangerous runs that didn't quite get picked out, but that's okay. Not every run your teammates are going to find you, so I don't have too much issues with that. I think Tim Weah is very solid. I like him being the furthest forward attacker, making runs, cutting inside, cutting through the lines to try and get fed the ball into these dangerous sorts of areas where he can take a touch and finish or finish one time in a one-on-one with the keeper or one-on-two. I think that Tim Weah is going to be the man that we rely on for goals. I think that we are lacking true goal scorers in this squad, and I think Tim Weah is one of the few of them, and a lot of our play style needs to center around creating opportunities for Tim Weah. Moving on to the subs, Aronson, I'll give him a 6. Didn't really do anything of note, gave the ball away a few times when he shouldn't have, but also made some decent passes, and he looked lively like he always does for Leeds, so I have nothing to criticize too much for Aronson. I'm going to give him a 6. Haji Wright, I'm going to give him, he wasn't on long enough to really make an impact, so 6, or, wasn't really there that much. Jordan Morris, I don't know why this guy is in the squad, let alone coming on. Played fine, uninspiring. I think every chance that he had in terms of crosses or shots got blocked. So it's kind of like banging your head against the wall over and over again. It's just not gonna work. He's not up to the standards that we need, and I don't know why Jordan Morris is coming on when we needed a goal. The game is tied at 1-1. Why is Jordan Morris being subbed on instead of Giovanni Reina? That I don't understand this decision. I entirely disagree with the decision to sub on Jordan Morris. I don't like it. I don't understand it. Especially when someone as creative and dynamic as Giovanni Reina is on the bench and ready and available. DeAndre Yedlin, I actually thought was very solid. Playing as an inverted fullback, he came on for Dest, and I thought he did quite well. Didn't really put a foot wrong, at least not too terribly much. And yeah, gave some good balls into the box. Actually, I think his crossing was the main source of threat that we provided in the second half, and that's disappointing. I think we need to find other ways of creating chances besides when teams sit down in the low block. I think we need to find other ways of creating chances aside from just giving it to our right back who's going to throw balls into the box and hope that one of our short attackers, our undersized attackers, can get on the end of it. But aside from that, I do think his delivery was good, and he found a few players that he probably shouldn't have. So I thought Yedlin was solid, and I'll give him a 6. Kellen Acosta was kind of disappointing. I rate Kellen Acosta. I like his inclusion in the squad. I think he's an underrated player. I think a lot of people think that the MLS is not as good of a league as it is, and I think Kellen Acosta is one of the better players in the league. He kind of got dominated by this Welsh midfield, didn't really do anything particularly impressive, and gave the ball away a few times. So I'm going to give him a 5, maybe even a 4.5. Just wasn't particularly impressive. My man of the match, I don't know why they've given it to Bale, and I don't know why who scored has given Kiefer Moore a 6.3. Kiefer Moore was excellent, and Kiefer Moore gets my man of the match in total today, despite only playing 45 minutes. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about today was the referee, who I think had a atrocious performance on both sides. I think the one call that he did get right was that penalty call. It's a pen every day of the week for me. The early yellow on Dest was just weird. I don't know why that's a yellow. I think that's a really, really soft yellow, especially in the World Cup. Like, come on, man. Let them play. And a lot of his fouls the way he was calling fouls was very inconsistent. On both sides, I think the U.S. got away with some things, and I think Wales got away with some things. There was this really weird moment in the second half where I believe it was Harry Wilson was making a run in behind, and Serginho Dest was defending it, and then Dest goes to clear the ball, and it went over the touchline. Clearly should have been a corner kick. It very clearly should have been a corner kick, and yet it was called a throw-in for some reason, right down at the corner. I don't know why. Everyone in the stadium saw that it should have been a corner kick except for the referee, so I don't know what he was watching there or what the process behind his decision-making was there. So it's not like he was favoring the Welsh. That's not what I'm saying. He was just bad all around, and the referee officiating, it needs to improve. If that's the best that they're putting out, that was not good enough. That was really, really poor. Even the commentary started saying it when he started to lose control of the game with players falling down and the timing and pace of the game. The referee just completely lost control. We didn't know, there wasn't really any consistency in whether he was calling fouls or calling stoppages or whatnot, and then it resulted in us having 9 minutes of extra time. This is becoming the tournament, the World Cup of extra time, after the English game, after the Netherlands and Senegal, and then of course today it was like 8 minutes of extra time added at least for each of those 3 games. That's absolutely absurd. I wouldn't be surprised if this World Cup breaks the record for most minutes of extra time added on. I think there was even 4 minutes of extra time in the first half. So yeah, ridiculous. The referee had an absolute stinker. I'm gonna give him a 2. He was really poor. The one call that he got right was the penalty, which is unfortunate for us. So yeah, all in all, for this game, I think it is a good show for where both teams stand. Wales have a very specific style that they're going to play. They're going to sit deep in a low block. They are going to defend. They are going to be solid and hard to score against. And they are going to attack directly and quickly in their counters and in their transition game. And they did that really well, especially in the second half. And I think if the U.S. doesn't get a goal in the first half, even if we were as dominant as we were, we do not even get anything from this game. So I think Wales gave a really good account for themselves, and I think the U.S. really disappointed. This is a team that the U.S. should be beating. This is a team that the U.S. men's national team, if they want to be a bigger player in international football, we need to win these games. We need to beat the teams who are worse than us every single time. I don't care if they have Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale's 34 years old. He's past it. He's not the same Gareth Bale that was at Real Madrid. He's not the same Gareth Bale that was at Tottenham Hotspur. He's past it. And we can't be intimidated in these sorts of moments. I don't care that we're young. We have experienced heads in there who need to get these young guys in the right mental space. And I think that a lot of this inconsistency and these weird decisions stems from the top, from the manager. And I think that a lot of our problems were on display today. We've put ourselves in a difficult position to try and qualify from the groups. We are lucky that Iran got absolutely hammered because it more or less eliminates their chances. If they drop points at either us or Wales, there's no way that Iran goes through. I think we're going to struggle to get anything out of the England game. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get a draw the way that we played today and the way that England played. I don't think so. I don't think that that's happening. So it's going to come down to that Iran game and also how Wales plays against Iran. I wouldn't be surprised if this comes down to goal difference. If Wales pick up a point or 3 points against England, I think that they're going through. I have a feeling England is going to get 9 points out of this group. And it's going to be between us and Wales who qualifies for next. And I think if we do not qualify for this group, Gregg Berhalter must be sacked immediately. There are some big problems, some big holes in the way that we play, in this squad, in the decision making. I don't know why Jordan Morris was coming on instead of Giovanni Reyna. I get it. He's older. He's more experienced. He doesn't have World Cup experience, whereas Gio Reyna does have Champions League experience and is just in every single way pretty much the better player. So I don't understand that decision whatsoever, and I'm going to criticize that. I'm going to hold Berhalter accountable when we're chasing the game, when we need a goal. Why are we bringing on Jordan Morris instead of Giovanni Reyna? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, there were a lot of problems on display for the U.S. I don't want to be too negative, too overreactive, because there were some good things to take away. Tim Weah looked really good. Christian Pulisic had a good game. Tyler Adams, of course, first World Cup captain game for him. So yeah, it was well done. In certain areas with certain players, I think Tim Ream played well. Matt Turner looked decent between the sticks. So there are positives to take from this match, but there's a lot of problems that I think were left there for the world to see in this game, and that's something that we really need to be careful about moving forward. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you liked what you saw, leave a like and a comment down below. I'm really looking forward to our next go around on Friday against England. Big game, big opportunity to come back to potentially get points up on the board for us. Should be a fun one nonetheless. So I'll see you on Friday. Let's go Yanks.